for the viola part, again, with style, this is a lot different than the rondeau that we were studying before. So the rondeau, we're doing everything mostly martelé with legato eighth notes. Now here, this whole thing has to be legato. In fact, the hooks are different in this one. So we do have hooks throughout, and the hooks for the moré were more of the détaché lancé, but here it's loré. And we have to make sure that it's more legato and connected. So practice making your hooks very smooth, very supple. Don't have too much articulation in them. And then when you're playing through the piece, you want to make sure that you stay true to all the dynamics, which there's plenty of dynamics. So starting from the beginning, be cognizant, be aware of what fingers should be high and which ones should be low. So we're in the key of C major, so that means we're playing high twos on the C string for E natural, high two on the D string for B, or on the G string for B natural. And then on the D string we have to play low two for F natural, and on the A string we have to play low two for C natural. So starting with that high two, make sure you start with a good enough mezzo forte so that we can come down to the piano at measure 5. Right, and then save a little bit more on the half notes. Use your whole bow, but then when you get to the quarter notes, we're going to use half the bow, kind of like what we're doing with the moré with our bow divisions. Then you get to measure 5 and we start these syncopated measures. So when we have measure 5, you have a quarter note on a down bow, and then you have 3 beats that you have to do on the up bow with the hook. So try and use enough down bow, but not to put a strong accent on that down bow. So a quick down bow, so you get closer to the tip, but keep it light. Again. And then build the crescendos, right? So just be aware of the bowing issues there. 13, we've arrived to the mezzo forte again, and then we have to build it up to that forte come measure 15. So a lot of the syncopation measures you're doing with the second violins, be sure that it's heard but it's not overwhelming, because the first violins have the tune. So measure 13. So when you get to, I'm going to jump ahead and come back, measure 19, 18, 19. Be sure that you're setting the third fingers together on both strings. So you have C on the G string as well as F on the C string. So I don't want to hear a big jump. There should not be a break in the sound. So try and make sure set for both notes so there's no break, right? So look, there's quite a few places in here where we have to be doing stuff like that. Try and set up notes so that there is no break in your sound. For instance, 16. Try not to lift that F natural. Keep it down. There's no need to lift it. And that's going to be the secret to making a true legato tone. Because if we do lift, I'll hear that sound, and then there's the chance of hearing an open D in there. So try and keep fingers down as much as possible. these little swells that we have here at measure 23, 24, 27, 28, exaggerate them, play them out. Obviously, if you see a crescendo, the first thing that you should think about would be playing softer. So that way we can make the exaggeration and get louder. So when you get to measure 22 or 23, start softer once you get to that crescendo, and then really play into that mezzo forte. So on, so on, so on. So be careful with the rhythm. I kind of goofed it there on measure 29, but just overdo those those dynamics. 29, we come back down to mezzo piano. Be sure to count carefully. So feel that dotted half note. Now, that at measure 34 is a very juicy moment. Another one of those blocked fingerings where you have to set the first finger on both strings. And then they're very interesting notes, so play them out. Even though it says to get softer, you can make the diminuendo from 34. But play out at least those first two notes. So measure 37, this is the tune. You finally get it, but you are sharing it with the cellos and you're sharing it with the second violins. And the tune doesn't quite go on, so it passes back and forth between the orchestra. So feel, you know where the tune is. It's those first two measures, and then 39 and 40 are less because it's not the tune. But then it comes back at 41, 43, 44 are a little bit less, right? So be sure, again, block the fingers when you see those threes line up again. And then we get to measure 45. 45 is all piano, so pickups to 45. Oh, so much in dynamic contrast there. So you go from the pianissimo, as soft as you can play, and then we have an accent on measure 48. Now, in this context, the accent can't be too harsh. So we're just going to do more of a vibrato accent than anything else, and then build that crescendo into 49 so that we have the mezzo forte. And then notice there's a comma on measure 50. That comma does not mean to retake. Miss Gazda is indicating to you that the first violins or whoever has the melody there is ending, and then that forte is a whole nother section. So it should have a whole nother feel to it. So bring out that forte section even more, but still maintain your legato. So again from 45. So when you get to 53, sustain, sustain, sustain. I wrote in the crescendo on measure 53 and diminuendo on measure 56. Sorry, 55 and 56. Try and make sure we do swell, because we want to hear that viola line. It's the only one in the orchestra that's doing this. It's a very beautiful part. And then vibrate as much as you can. Going on, measure 61 with the pickup. So 61 is pretty straightforward. Just make sure you're thinking of that diminuendo all the way to measure 67. Anytime it's written out crescendos or cresc or DIM, those mean the same thing as those long alligator mouths. Just making sure that you're getting softer all the way until the next dynamic marking, which is measure 67. So all of that has to fade and fade and fade until you arrive to 67. And then suddenly you're back to that mezzo forte with the pickups to measure 69. So I don't know if you noticed, but I totally goofed the bowing there. But in case you do, just take a double down or double up, whatever you need to do so you get back on. With this section here, we're kind of arriving to the climax of the piece, which is the sunrise. When you get here, definitely build up that fortissimo all the way up to triple F, which is fortissimo, and we get to our first low one. It's kind of the same low one that we've been doing with the rondo on the A string, but now we're doing it on the D string. So if you have a D sharp, you have to do a low one, which is the same thing as an E flat, right? So lower that first finger, da, da, dee. So lower it and then bring it right back up so you can get that E natural. And remember, the sharp is good for the whole measure. So measure 80 is all D sharp. And then we get to the divisi parts. So divisi parts, bottom part is always more important than the top part. So bottom parts, make sure you play nice and strong. Top parts, listen down to the bottom parts and make sure that you're thinking about your whole steps and half steps. So bottom part, I'll play yours first, starting with the divisi. Very easy. Just make sure allargando, so I'm sorry, I'm kind of skipping ahead. Measure 80 is RAT. We already talked about that. That means to slow down. And then we arrive to a new tempo at measure 81. And then allargando means to broaden even more. So at this point, we're going to go from cut time into 4/4 time. And take your time on these half notes and quarter notes. So we have. Now these accents, I would want you to have just a little bit more emphasis. So we're kind of losing the legato feel, maybe more of a martelé stroke, but the idea is that we're concluding the piece, and the sun has risen, and it's a brand new day. So we want to make it feel like we've arrived. Same thing for the top part. Now, just be careful that you're sustaining your sound. So a lot of times I'll hear students play, which does not have the same intensity. We want to make sure that we keep up the intensity all the way through. And then for that top part, make sure you're thinking, this is my second finger in third position. So find that third position. That's where your third finger goes normally. Set your first finger there. That's D on the A string. And then your second finger is E. And then half step, so low 3. Feel those fingers touch. Low 3. And then you'll have F natural. And then a whole step to G. So feel that fourth finger stretch just a little bit more. And then that pretty much concludes the whole piece. So if you have any questions, go ahead and jump on Google Classroom. I'll be happy to answer any sort of issues. Also, be sure to talk to your music teacher at school. And then I wish you the best of luck.